Nobody warned you that watching someone else's home movies could make you miss your own life. That's what happens when you watch this footage. This is a California Navy family. 1960s. Real home movies. Not a documentary. Not a TV show. A real man. A real wife. Real kids. And a camera that caught something most families never captured. What life actually felt like when it was good. He served the United States Navy, but nobody filmed that part. They filmed this instead. Beach days, horseback riding in the mountains, Disneyland with the kids, a military air show, a golden anniversary that nobody outside this family ever witnessed. 60 years of silence. Until now. San Diego, Long Beach, Coronado. If you got a Navy posting to California in the 1960s, you had won something. You just didn't know what to call it yet. The Pacific was 20 minutes from the base. On a Saturday morning, you loaded the kids in the car, drove to the coast, and for a few hours, nobody was a sailor and nobody was a Navy wife. You were just a family. At the beach, in California, look at her. She's not performing for the camera. She doesn't even know what to do with it. She just waves. That's what California felt like in the 1960s if you were lucky enough to be there. And this family was. When the uniform came off, he was just a dad. Hawaiian shirt, slacks, carrying something from the car to the house like every man on every street in America in 1965. But look at the house. Look at the neighborhood. These families lived next to each other, moved together, said goodbye to each other every 2 or 3 years, and started over somewhere new. And yet look at this party. These people are not performing happiness. They are actually happy. Because when you live that kind of life, moving every 2 years, deployment always somewhere in the back of your mind, you learn something most people never figure out. You learn how to be present. Nobody at that party was somewhere else in their head. They were there, together, in the sun, in California. A Navy family in the 1960s didn't sit still. They couldn't. Moving was already in their blood. Horseback riding in the Sierra Nevada. Camping trips that took 3 days to plan and 1 broken-down car to remember forever. Kids scrambling up mountain trails, arms raised at the top like they'd conquered something. Because they had. These kids grew up differently. They knew how to walk into a new school and find a friend by lunch. They knew home wasn't a house. Home was wherever the family was together. And then, Disneyland. Disneyland in the 1960s was brand new. It was the most American thing you could do with a free weekend and a tank of gas. You drove down, you paid your $1, and for 1 day, the base, the next deployment, the next move, none of it existed. Now this moment is something else entirely. For most families watching that air show, it was entertainment. Something to point at. Something to say wow about. But for this family? That was Dad's world up there. The thing he never explained at dinner. The thing that made the kids proud in a way they were too young to put into words. A Navy man standing in a crowd, watching jets he knows by name, with his children standing next to him, seeing it all for the first time. That is not a generic American moment. That is one specific, unrepeatable, completely real human moment. And somebody had the sense to film it. Time moves differently when you watch old home movies. 1 minute it's kids running on the beach. Then suddenly there's a graduation. A young woman in a white gown standing next to her mother, who is dressed beautifully and smiling like she's trying not to cry. Then, a golden anniversary. 50 years together. A Navy couple who moved every few years, raised their children in base housing across California, held everything together through deployments and distance, and still made it to 50 years. Nobody made a speech about that. Nobody wrote an article. Just a family. In a backyard. In California. With a camera pointed at them. 50 years. This family never thought anyone would watch this footage. They weren't making content. They weren't building a legacy. They were just living the way Americans used to live when living was enough. A Navy man, a California life, a family that held together through everything the 1960s threw at them. If you grew up in a military family, drop a comment below. Tell us where you were stationed. Tell us if this looked like your life, because this channel exists for one reason: to make sure these moments are never forgotten.